Okay, so this is my second rapture dream. So this happened exactly 1 month to the day of my previous one. So this would be on the 24th of October 2023. So this one is completely different to the previous one where I was up in the clouds and it was very normal day kind of activities I was doing. This one, I was actually in a kind of town-like environment with my mum, and so I was wandering down what we would call in the UK our high street. So it's where every town has their main commercial centres, where all the main shops are, and sometimes obviously have little side streets which maybe have smaller shops, less well-known brands, that kind of thing. Well, this was very similar to that. So I was on the main street, is why here it's called in the US. So on Main Street, and I look across at one of these parallel roads, and there's in the blue sky, I'm kind of just looking up and looking across at the same time. In the blue sky, I just see this what looks like a massive spacecraft. And I say massive; it was very distant. I could tell, could be tens of miles away, but it was very big. And obviously everybody around me has just stopped what they're doing and they're just looking. Everyone's looking at the same place in the sky. In the sky, there's things you can kind of see that are moving around below this spaceship, and it kind of reminded me, a little bit like Independence Day. Where you've got the little fighter jets that are all kind of whizzing around below the main huge UFO. So it was kind of like that. Saw these little things that were whizzing around, and then I saw coming up from the ground, quite slowly, just floating up, like a white, sorry, not white, but a light sort of blue, kind of like lines sort of going up, but not necessarily sort of straight. It was all sort of quite slow moving, and it was just loads of them are all going up at the same time. And it dawned on me, like, whoa, this is the rapture. I had that actual, recollection of that in my mind, and sort of said that in my mind while I was in the dream. And then I started to panic because I was thinking, well, why am I not going up? What? And I started to get quite anxious and starting to feel like, oh no, I'm not going to go up. And then pretty much as soon as that thought entered my mind, I felt this charge. How I would describe it was literally just in my chest, literally just around there. And I felt this surge. Now I kind of describe it very much. It was like it felt like something was charging up. That kind of feeling that I was feeling. No sound, but that kind of feeling of something really charging up. And obviously that was a bit like, whoa, what is going on? And then I'm kind of looking around. I'm just a bit, what's going on? I kind of know what's going on, but at the same time, like, what is going on? And all the people that were kind of around me start backing off from me and looking, scared, looking at me scared, basically. And I must have been, and I was kind of lighting up. So there was obviously something going on with me, but it was quite a slow process of this charging up, and at the same time, I guess, glowing. And then I weirdly, hopefully if this happens in real life, I won't do this, but I kind of got myself into a pose of like, I'm about to jump up, It was like a Superman sort of Marvel pose or something. Great, yeah, anyway, so I got myself into this kind of pose, and then it was just, as I said, it's this charging, and it hit its absolute peak, and then it was just bang, and I was gone. So I kind of, when I was reflecting on it afterwards, it made me think so much of Man of Steel, the Superman, more modern-ish Superman film, where he's learning to fly for the very first time, and there's this bit where he's got his fists, to the ground, and that same sort of thing's happening. Like the ground is rumbling, and all the kind of rocks start floating, and then it's just bang, and you see him, kind of break the sound barrier, all that kind of thing. It was like that. It was just a kind of charge. Again, I also describe it very much like a warp engine on, the Enterprise in Star Trek. You've got that again, same thing. We just got that charging up that you hear with the Enterprise, and then it stretches, doesn't it? And then it's bang, it's off. It was just like that, like putting a handbrake on, charging up really heavily, and then flying off into the sky. I had absolutely no visual reference at all for the actual travel aspect. So that was what was odd, because obviously, as I said, everybody else was kind of slowly going up, but I didn't recall that travel. So it felt like it was quick for me, in that I felt that kind of explosion of energy, but at the same time, don't recall the actual travel aspect. But when I kind of, I guess, blinked, I suppose it's how I would describe it, almost like a change of scene in a film, that kind of thing. Then I was outside the planet, so I was then, quite a bit outside the planet, where I could see the whole planet. But I would have said it was like kind of like at satellite distance, where you couldn't see the whole world, but most of it, you could see just by looking easily. So I was in a kind of like a satellite distance, and I was up there with loads of other people, loads. I wouldn't say thousands, I'd say maybe 100, let's say, or maybe less. And we just had this brief moment where we're all looking on the Earth, just looking down at the Earth. We haven't seen anything, we're not seeing any devastation or anything. We're not seeing anything like that. But we're just looking on it. It's like a pause, really, just to kind of acclimatise yourself to, whoa, I'm in outer space and I'm not needing to breathe, or I can breathe. No feeling of anything. Obviously, I was in zero gravity. I'm outside of the atmosphere, so I'm kind of floating around. But we're all kind of quite static in the air, not wildly out of control. But then we were all kind of trying to get our bearings. How do we move in space? And again, as we all kind of take our eyes off of Earth for a moment, we look around, we can see this. It's like a space station. It's basically like a space station up there. The hatch open, and those of us that are obviously closest to this thing were kind of just going off relatively slowly, off and into this space station. And I was one of the more furthest away, so I was probably about 100 feet away, I would say, roughly. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, how do I get myself over there? I'm in space, I can't sort of swim my way over or anything like that, or fly over. And all I did was just focus my kind of my attention, I suppose, as to this hatch, and then I just kind of got drawn to this hatch. So I didn't have to do anything. It was like I thought it, and I was there. And I got inside, and then inside it was, we just kind of walked in, and it was kind of like a classroom, is how I would describe it. I mean, there was quite a few seats all laid out. It's like there's a presentation, with a projector behind you and a board that they're going to tell you. It felt like you were in like orientation or something like that. It's like, look, this has just happened. We're going to brief you on what's happened, what's next, what's going on. It felt very much like that. People were starting to take their seats, and then that was it. The dream was over. So it felt like that was like as I said, it was like a classroom. It was, this has just happened. Look, we'll explain what's going on. I realised in going through this, there was actually a major part that I forgot to mention. So, as I mentioned back to where I was looking up at the sky, and there was all those whizzing around things, and then the blue lights of people going up. What I forgot to mention was there was something pretty massive that came out of this ship, and it just came zooming down. Again, not necessarily like super fast, maybe the same sort of speed as the other people were going up, but it was massive in comparison. I mean, obviously, if they're humans and they're little dots, this was big, really, really big. And this came down, and as it came down, the bottom of it was on fire, and when it hit the ground, it caused a huge shockwave that hit us all. And so before that kind of charging up bit I mentioned, this shockwave hits, and it takes maybe 2 seconds for the distance it was to hit us. It's like a nuke kind of shockwave. Well, not as destructive as that, but it knocked everybody to our feet, and then that's when we get back up, and and then that's when that charging thing happens, and I realise it's the rapture and stuff like that. So that's should have put that in there. Sorry, I forgot about that bit. So my afterthoughts of that, again, which I would have written at the time, but again, in writing my dream journal, which I've been writing 2 years later after going through all the notes on my phone, is I've noticed how much more I understand things now, and how much clearer things are. So I feel like God's revealing a lot of the stuff to me. Now it's the right time to release all these things. So yeah, so one of the things I would have said that that I found interesting thinking about was those things whizzing around. I didn't really know what they were at all at the time, but now from hearing other people talking about their dreams, they've talked about angels coming and then collecting people to take them to heaven. That's what I think they might have been. I think they might have been, angels coming down, picking people up, taking them up, because they didn't serve any other purpose. There was no explanation as to what they were. So I think that's probably what that was. Again, I know the figure that comes down and smashes to the ground. Again, this was at that time though. I thought straight away, oh, that's Jesus returning, isn't it? That's where he, comes down and is with, is it feet of bronze and legs on fire, that kind of thing, because it looked like it almost looked like a rocket coming down, but obviously with all the flames and stuff coming off the bottom end of it while it was going downwards. So it could have represented that. I mean, a lot of it is obviously symbolic. I don't necessarily think that any of these things are going to happen in the same timeline, but a lot of these are just things that I think are being communicated to me. And also another thing I remember was while we were walking around the high street, I was walking around with my mum, is we were having a conversation about God in general. So we were talking about things and saying, oh look, we've got to make sure that we're speaking to our family members more, and in particular I was thinking about my wife at the time, who's still 2 years later, she's still a non-believer. And my dad's very, I don't know with my dad, his wife is very much Christian, has been for a very, very, very long time. I keep obviously sending him bits and pieces and trying to explain things like UFOs away and exactly what we know them to be, clearly demons and all of that kind of stuff, and explaining all of that kind of aspect. And I've had many dreams since that have involved them specifically, and they're very much evangelistic dreams where something will happen, it's like the world's going to end and it's quick, you've got to do this, say the sinner's prayer, that kind of thing, So that was very much on my mind. And that's again another feature I would have said of dreams that you just know that there's something to come. When you're talking about God in your dreams, I find that's almost like I'm going to give you a message in this one, and I then very much pay attention to what's going to be going on in that dream. But that, I think, is pretty much it. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'll leave it there.